How can any party make a pre-election promise anymore? Like, you've made a promise about the rebuild to Dunedin Hospital, obviously something in the country, but me and Chewie are both in Dunedin. But how can you make that promise knowing that, as we've just seen, after the election you have to go into negotiation, and then what if another party doesn't want to do that? So how do you make any kind of promise at all pre-election for what you're going to do?
I mean, I think, frankly, you need to be better at the art of post-election negotiations than the current Prime Minister was. He seemed to take the attitude, well, because he didn't get an outright majority, then therefore everything that the National Party campaigned on was somehow, just a guideline that maybe that they may or may not do. Actually, the National Party is still by far the biggest party in government, and I think he clearly gave up in negotiations far too early, and also gave some of those smaller parties a bunch of stuff that New Zealanders clearly didn't vote for. So, I mean, I think the way you deal with that is you clear before the election. Look, these are our bottom lines. These are the things that we won't do. These are our bottom lines and the things that we must do. Of course, everything in the middle is negotiable. In many cases, with the parties that we've worked with previously, it's been a question of how far can we get in terms of the stuff that we're proposing to do, rather than doing completely the opposite, which seems to be what this government are doing.
It does feel funny when Christopher Luxon says, ACT's not happy and we're not happy. And I'm like, I thought negotiation was about a win-win. He keeps selling it like this is a lose-lose. I'm a negotiator. We negotiated a lose-lose. No one's happy. But recently we also heard out, well, we're being informed that the treaty principle referendum was not a bottom line, or never had to get to the point with ACT for a bottom line. That Jack Tame interview, you guys must have salivated when you heard that. I know we did. It was an incredible piece of news to talk about. But when it comes to those negotiations, so that says one of two things to me. Either Christopher Luxon is not a good negotiator and Seymour just walked him around, or for some reason Christopher Luxon was okay with this legislation, even though he's running away from it now. They're the only two possibilities.
I think it's a combination of both. I think clearly he's not a very good negotiator, but second of all, I think there was a huge amount of political naivety when they negotiated this agreement. I think he genuinely didn't appreciate the significance of what he was signing the government up to. I think he looked at that and said, "Oh, that's just something that we can give them. It's, we're going to vote for it at first reading. We won't vote for it at second reading. Ah, no big deal. We'll just agree to that." I don't think he actually realised what a lightning rod this was going to be. So I think it was a combination of bad negotiation and naivety.
What's going on in that coalition? And this, I'll give you three examples as to what I'd like you to speak to. Last week, David Seymour tells the news it's all ACT policies that are going through. The day after that, Winston says that Christopher Luxon's struggling. And then in the weekend, we find out that a huge embarrassment to the Prime Minister that the treaty referendum wasn't a bottom line. What are those other two doing? What's it about?
Well, I mean, I said before the election, during one of those leaders' debates, that I thought Winston Peters and David Seymour would run circles around Christopher Luxon, and I think that that's proven to be true. But I think what you've seen from their comments in the last week or two is that they don't really respect him. They wouldn't be out there making those comments about Christopher Luxon if they actually respected him and respected the job that he was doing as Prime Minister. Even if they might disagree from time to time, if they respected him, they wouldn't be undermining him in the way that they are now. So it's clear, I don't think that Winston Peters and David Seymour respect him. And I think that creates a lot of friction within the government. It's also clear that they don't really respect each other. I mean, they've got a long history of taking pot shots at one another.
Yeah.
Winston Peters promising to knock David Seymour out, and various other things, and David Seymour calling Winston Peters a crook. That's all on record. It's clear that clearly that animosity hasn't gone away.
That's how they should have decided the deputy prime ministership, if you ask me. They should have gotten into the ring. That would have been a pay-per-view, raise some money.
What lessons are there for you in your own negotiations for the next election, dealing with your own potential coalition partners?
Well, I don't think it's something that you start the day after the election, or weeks after the election. I think it's something that you start working on early, because we've already had some conversations with the Greens and conversations with the Māori Party. They're different parties. We're cooperating and competing. It's MMP. We're out for every vote that we can get. But the basic sort of bottom line that I gave them, and actually I think they're on board with this too, is unlike the current government, we can disagree agreeably. We can basically say, look, we don't agree with that, but we can be respectful towards one another. We don't have to take pot shots towards one another. We don't have to undermine the public confidence that we can work together. You can work together with people you disagree with. And so I think that's the key lesson for us is in the next 2 years, whilst we're in opposition, we've actually got to demonstrate to New Zealanders that we can work constructively together even where we disagree. And, I'll give you just a practical example of what that looks like. When I was in opposition last time, I was Labour's education spokesperson. Tracy Martin was New Zealand First's education spokesperson. We worked on the select committee together. We actually became very good friends, though we were in different political parties. And when it came time to form the government, we had a really good, constructive, positive working relationship from the very first day we were ministers. And I think those are, that doesn't mean we agreed on everything. All the way through government, there were regular areas where we would disagree, but it never became a problem. And so I think that's something that these guys don't seem to be able to do. They don't seem to be able to say, okay, well, look, we're going to disagree on that, but we're going to move forward on that. That sort of conversation just doesn't seem to be happening. They seem to, or where it is happening through the media, which is quite bizarre.
I guess the thing that focuses it that in my mind is that there was a little bit of sniping between Labour and Greens right at the election that didn't, in my opinion at least, didn't reflect very well on anybody. It seemed a bit more divided than what you're describing there. Was that reflected on?
I don't think there really was. I think if you look at Labour and the Greens will disagree from time to time. I think we've generally managed to do that pretty constructively. Our own history will show, if you go back all the way back, I've been around a while, if you go all the way back to 2002, when Labour and the Greens last kind of openly attacked each other during a general election campaign, which is what happened in 2002, both parties went down. Both parties lost support as a result of that. So there's, I've been really clear. I'm not out there to take votes off the Green Party. I welcome Green Party voters, but I'm not chasing those votes. I want to take votes off National, New Zealand First, and ACT. That's ultimately how we're going to form the government.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, Chris, and we think as, what are we, armchair critics here, Chewie? That the job of the Greens is to activate I'm going to use terms that people go, there's no such term, but to activate the far left. The far left seem to be the apathetic ones in America. The far left are the ones that didn't come out and vote because they were grumpy around Israel and Gaza and Biden's stance on it. Greens' job is to activate the far left, to get them up and get them voting. Māori Party, obviously Māori is their vote. And the job for the Labour Party is to own that centre and take as many of those swing voters, many of those centrist voters off National as you can. And that we see that and we think it is actually then a coalition that can own a sector and move forward.
I think one of the challenges with talking about the centre, and I've really grappled with this, and particularly since I became leader of the Labour Party, is the centre isn't what I thought it was. If you think about what the centre, the way we would, as political animals, we might conceive the centre as being somewhere between the left and the right. The centre basically isn't. The centre's anyone who's willing to change their minds, willing to switch their votes. And in the last election, I had some bizarre conversations with people. People saying, "Oh, I haven't quite decided how I'm going to vote yet. I'm tossing up between voting ACT or voting Green." And you kind of like, how do you get there? What's the journey that you're on? That those are your two choices. So the centre is, it's most people don't think in terms of left and right in the way that people who are engaged in politics do.